Miri, retired colonel from the Israeli Defense Forces, served in Israeli military intelligence for over 20 years. Today, the director of the International Institute for Counterterrorism at Reichman University in Herzliya.
What was it like for you last night?
When the spokesperson on behalf of the IDF first said, okay, everybody, this is probably going to be it. And then he very calmly stated that there are projectiles on the way to Israel. First, we need to understand how different that is from any scenario in Israel ever, okay? Usually, we get sirens, and then the IDF spokesperson comes up and says, these sirens are coming from here and there, this is how you need to act. Right. On April 13th, 2024, the IDF spokesperson said, we can expect an attack. The attack is going to happen tonight. Everybody take the precautions, and he went through the precautions. And then he said, okay, the projectiles are on the way, and we all took the precautions. It essentially means that you're sitting and dreading and waiting and wondering if the capabilities that Israel has established over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, because there's all sorts of different types, all really are addressing the threat that's on the way. And that's what I was thinking about the evening and this morning.
How do you think we did?
I give us a really, really good scoring card. We did better than I imagined, which is saying a lot. We also did not do this alone, which is very important. And it's the combination that we both have allies that understand the threat the same way, and the capabilities that scientists thought that were impossible were used this morning in intercepting intercontinental ballistic missiles, essentially, is, to me, the most amazing part. Okay, 30 years ago, I served in the Israeli Chief of Staff's office, even a bit longer than that. Ehud Barak is a very exceptional man in any case. And at that time, a group of Israeli physicists came to him with the crazy idea that they had solved an algorithm that would allow you to intercept intercontinental ballistic missiles in flight. And at the end, it's about math and physics. And I remember those discussions 30-some years ago, and I don't know math and I don't know physics. And thinking to myself how crazy they actually think that they can hit something going so fast in the outer atmosphere. And not only that, but we've translated that not only into intercontinental ballistic missiles, but really to every single type of projectile that has a motor. It's unbelievable.
An intercontinental, just for context, people that don't know.
Over 1,000 kilometers.
Like it can go over 1,000 kilometers?
It can go over 1,000 kilometers. It can go over 5,000 kilometers. Iran, at the time, it was already the Iranian challenge. And what they were looking at the time was that the distance from Iran to here is 1,100 kilometers, 700 miles. The definition of what an intercontinental ballistic missile is just has to do with distances, because that's how far it is.
But it doesn't have to do with speed in the same way. That's not the same.
Not necessarily.
Gotcha. How does the average person deal with this happening within Israel? What is the average thing that a person goes through?
So every single day, we each think of where our families are and what we're doing. So how do we contend with it? You make the decision if you are going to work or not. That has a lot to do if you have kids in the household, because they decided that schools were not open. If you have kids, you're at home with your kids. Most people will stay close to home. Not necessarily because they have a full-range bomb shelter in the house, but all of us feel safer inside our houses. You usually know within the house the exact spot you're going to go to if you don't have a safe room. And you do little preparations. For me, my little preparations is that I made sure that the cell phone was fully charged, assuming that cell phones would work. And in a silly way, there are certain pictures that we take down from the wall because we're worried about shrapnel more than anything else, and we figure that if it's on the ground, it won't explode in the same way. We each have our problems.
Was last night different than other attacks in that regard in terms of preparation that you feel?
I didn't feel the difference in preparation. I did feel a difference in dread. It's the first time the Iranians have ever directly attacked Israel. For many years, we've understood that Iran has enormous capabilities. But you always wonder, maybe we're wrong, Maybe they have something that we don't know. Maybe our interceptors won't intercept. And that kind of dread I have not felt, not against Hamas, not against Hezbollah.
I remember they said, the drone's been launched. And we're okay. And they go, oh, no, it's going to take
Hours. So that has to do with my own background, that because I know of the different types of capabilities, as soon as they said drones, I was like, okay, I can go to sleep because it's only going to be tomorrow morning. But then they also fired different types of both missiles and rockets that have a much shorter time of flying in getting to the state of Israel.
Okay, so moving towards that and stuff. So then people go to shelters. Can you just for a second, before I get into what threats are to these shelters, what are the different kinds of shelters that exist? So anyone doesn't know.
So in my house, there's no shelter. That's one kind of shelter that exists, meaning you have a lot of places that do not have a shelter. It means that they were built in between the end of the law for a bomb shelter and before the law for a safe room. Those are two different types of shelters. My house happens to be that, which means that in my house I have a designated area that I go to, but it's not actually a shelter. I should tell you that now that we're sitting here and there may be a siren that goes off, right? Okay? I can show you where it is, right? Okay? Inside most of the country, the state of Israel, the two different distinctions are what I am going to call basement bomb shelters, meaning that they're built into the basement. You go downstairs, you go into the basement. It's a special concrete heavy room that also has certain capabilities against WMD, weapons of mass destruction, certainly chemical and biological, and perhaps maybe, I don't think so, nuclear. But that's the one kind, which is going to be the underground basement bomb shelter. Those are actually getting to be less and less. Israel changed the law in the early 1990s. And what they said was, that's okay, bomb shelters are okay, it's not that they're against it, but that more effective in the quickness of people getting into different places is that every single apartment in the state of Israel, every single house in the state of Israel has to build as part of it a safe room. And it's a concrete room, but it's above ground. That means that every house has one attached. Every apartment, that's going to be one of the rooms of the apartment. The room itself costs 120% more than a regular room because it's with double concrete, a special window. And usually most people will turn it either into a kid's bedroom or into, like the storage room. That's usually the two options. What'll happen in times of threats, and we've already been in a war for 6 months, is that everybody cleans the safe room out. And they make sure, because what a lot of people have done is they'll change the heavy-duty door and the heavy-duty windows for easier ones, and then the war starts. Everybody wants to bring back the heavy-duty. So there's all sorts of, it sounds like silly things, but it's to keep people protected, because the dimensions of the room, the concrete itself, the steel windows and the steel door are all there to protect you against the payloads that are coming in on the different projectiles.
Do buildings struggle sometimes, like larger apartment complexes, when they have that more, like the more underground type one, but where it's just crowded with stuff? Do they struggle to get that out? Is that a...
So part of the preparations that the Israeli Homeland Front is responsible for, and they're supposed to go and check that out, is they go and they do what they call bomb shelter inspections. A lot of times in areas and urban areas, those basement bomb shelters that are usually very large rooms because they're supposed to be able to accommodate a lot of people, will turn into local clubs, places where you do different activities for the kids, or where people dump the stuff that they don't know what to do in their apartment. So before that's going to be something periodic that's going to happen, is clear out and clean the bomb shelters. I'm always appalled, I say this from the bottom of my heart, I'm always appalled how every single time they do the inspections and just find them in horrible shape. You'd think, you would live in this country and the people would upkeep them. No, that's the dumb place for most Israelis until they need it, and then everybody cleans it out. One of the weirdest things that happened is that prices of apartments in Tel Aviv totally changed in the last 6 months. Rental prices in Tel Aviv are very high, but nowadays, if you rent an apartment that does not have the safe room, okay, it's cheaper. And until 6 months ago, it made no difference. But people nowadays understand the importance of having a safe. The safe room is the same as it's a bomb against bomb shelter, but it's above ground. And the bomb shelter is always with the connotation that it's underground, that it's a bunker. And so in Tel Aviv, I suddenly found that people were looking for apartments and they could easily find one if it was in the 4th floor and it didn't have a safe room. It changed the prices. So it even has an impact on the economy in wartime.
What other types of bomb shelters exist, or mamods, or whatever they call them?
So in addition to the two basic kinds of the underground bunker one and the above ground safe rooms, every single public arena has to have one or the other. So when it comes to like college campuses, they turn entire classrooms into what is an above ground safe room. And in addition to that, you are going to have much more heavy duty kind of capabilities. Those are usually going to only be built for what you're going to call national security value places. It can be in electrical places, places that supply electricity, water supplying places, and the overall national security locations. Those can have multi-floored, underground, leveled concrete structures that are built under the side of a hill into a mountain underground. And you have them all over Israel because you have them in the different military security locations.
Is there one that's specifically very famous for any reason?
There's always been, like stories about different ones. But specifically the one that's probably been the most famous with very little information about it is that somewhere in Jerusalem, the Prime Minister's office has one that's underground that supposedly has secret passways here and there. Nobody's ever seen it. It's only been talked about. And everybody has confirmed that such a thing exists, but it's as if we don't really know where you go into it and where you get out of it. So a different way that Israel builds, and most countries wouldn't think of doing that, is that all over Israel right now, they are building a vast amount of what you call light rail and underground rail. Any other country in the world builds the light rail and underground rail. In Israel, when you build the light rail, the underground rail, and you build all of the different capabilities, you build them as mass bomb shelters. So that when you're going down into what, your regular subway kind of system, in Israel, they're upfront built as something like that. I just happened to be in New York, and it's not an urban myth. Under Grand Central, there is a very deep place where Roosevelt would be taken, where there was a train that would go out, and it's not a myth. And that's from World War II. So here in Israel, what they've done is both in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem, in the rail underground, they become mass areas that people can go down as safe areas in times of a siren.
Awesome. And then there's still a few other types of shelters. Anything else you want to tell me about a few others? I can give you some ideas, but...
Give me some ideas because
Sure.
I'm blanking on anything else there.
There's the ones that are on the road.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
Right
let's think right now of normal countries that build bus stations. What do you do in a country where there are incoming rockets and people are at the bus station? So initially it was only built down south in the area surrounding the Gaza Strip, which means that anything within the perimeter there, if you don't have a safe concrete area to get into, then you are going to be in the open air, and that's much more dangerous. So what they started to build is next to every single, think of a bus station, you look and you suddenly see what looks like actually a very beautiful concrete shelter. And why do I say beautiful? Because most of the ones down south, if not all of them, have been painted with murals by really famous mural artists, because it's supposed to help people to calm down, because you literally have 5-10 seconds to get into the shelter. You see it, you go inside, you're immediately safer because you're not in the open area. Most of the casualties are from shrapnel, and that's why you want to be inside the safe room. A direct hit does not happen that often. 99% of the hits are not direct hits on a shelter or on a building. It's rather that it hits the ground and hits something nearby, and the shrapnel is what kills people. In Israel, in the oddest way, when you have soccer fields, playing fields, you can have them, you literally have parks that are children's play parks, where they've made portions of the play park out of concrete, so that if there's a siren, the kid is playing inside a caterpillar made out of concrete, and he can stay inside the caterpillar. You have places like that both in Sderot and in Netivot. You have a full built size princess's castle, but it's built out of concrete. so that if a kid is playing inside it and the siren goes off, they just stay inside. It's safer it's safer. It's a safe space for them inside. In the attack on October 7th, one of the ones that got more attention in that sense is that when you have big events in Israel because of this threat, they put up local concrete shelters that are a little more makeshift, a little more open up on the sides. They're not as well constructed. And at one of the music festivals that was taking place down south, people ran into those local makeshift kind of shelters, and then the terrorists came and threw grenades into them and killed the people in there, amongst other things, that way.
Yeah, which is, what constitutes a shelter like this? And what is the makeup of these things?
So most of the shelters are the size of a room. It can be a bedroom, not that big, a larger bedroom in that sense, or the size of a living room, meaning they're an open room. Inside the room itself, it is going to have some kind of, in the smaller ones, all it is the room itself that has a very special window and a special door, because the idea is that you're going into it for a limited amount of time, and it's supposed to give you protection against incoming projectiles. In a very horrific way. That was one of the worst ways that these were used against the civilians, against all of the Israelis down south who went into these safe rooms on October 7th, and then they were burnt down inside them or murdered inside them because they went in to find shelter from the rockets. The bigger bomb shelters, and it doesn't matter if it's above ground or below ground, are already going to have they also have special types of air filters that are supposed to stop both smoke and what I said before, WND. It's not going to stop nuclear. These are not nuclear shelters, but it will stop the bulk of chemical weapons and most biological weapons. It has a special type of screen that you have to activate. And again, because we don't use them all year round, it's something that you're supposed to come and check every once in a while. And if you don't check it, it doesn't necessarily work. In the underground bomb shelters, it can already have much more construction. It can have bunk beds, it can have a bathroom, it can have running water. That's going to be for people who are going to be there for more lengths of time. And what they tried to do in safe rooms in the areas where you could find yourself in a safe room for hours at end would be to have a little hallway that would lead to at least some kind of a bathroom facility. But most of them are very simple rooms that are basically a regular room with only one window. The window closes in with a steel window. The door closes by a heavy-duty door with a bar, and all of it is protect you against incoming rockets, projectiles. It's not supposed to stop a person who's going to come in and shoot you. That's not what it was made for.
Moving over to what these projectiles are. So one of the differences between last night and every other attack in recent history has been that fear of what is actually coming, the actual
payload.
The payload of things. Don't tell me about just what all that is.
When we talk about weaponry in today's age, most of us think of a bullet. And then after a bullet, some of us can think what a bomb looks like. A lot of us will think of spy versus spy and a little ball that looks like a bowling ball. Most of the weaponry in today's day and age, we're talking about a payload that it weighs in kilos and tons. Kilos and tons of explosives. And it's really hard to think of it in those kind of terms because we're talking about a kind of payload that it explodes when it hits the target. And what's also packed into a lot of that, the explosion itself does a very strong hidif.
Shockwave.
The shockwave, okay? And the shockwave, what most people are not aware of, is what kills most people because that shockwave literally tears apart most of our innards if you're nearby. If you're inside the safe room, it stops the shockwave, but that means that you close the door and you close the window. It isn't going to be as effective if the window is open or if the door is open. So first of all, you go inside to save yourself from the shockwave. You're going inside to save yourself from the shrapnel. The shrapnel itself does not explode, but it's going out at a very fast rate. And most of the casualties that I've known down south in the 20-some years of rockets being fired down south are from shrapnel. Not even the shockwave, it's from the shrapnel. It's people who are outside. When you lay down flat, if you're outside, that helps the shrapnel, okay? That helps both the shrapnel and the shockwave. But if you're up a little bit, then you're going to get the shrapnel because the shockwave is. And so I just put that out there.
I'm just curious, is that because the shockwave
Goes down and up because of the earth. Okay? So if you lay down flat, I hate to put it in these terms,
That's
but
fine. This is actually
if you lay down flat, you'll live if it didn't hit you directly. Okay? Hit direct, say Shema Yisrael, you're gone, you're not even have time to say Shema Yisrael. But if you're not hit direct and you're lying down, you won't hear anything. It'll probably destroy your eardrums. And again, because of the shock wave, and the eardrums are very, very, very gentle. But aside from that, if you're lying down flat, you're not going to get the shock wave. I mean, all of the earth will move in that sense, and you're not going to get the shrapnel because the shrapnel hits the ground and then it goes up. So if you're just a little bit further away, it's going to go up. It's not going to go towards you. And most people, they don't want to lie down flat, and they don't understand that aspect. But if you lie down flat and put your head flat, that's actually the safest outside. If you're already in the safe room, it's going to stop that. The bulk of the concrete stops all shrapnel. To be very clear, there is no such thing which is 100% anytime, anywhere on any weapon or defense system. And in a year or two ago, I'm not going to say exact, I don't remember if it was last August or June the year before, in one of the different incoming rocket occasions, a 4-year-old was killed when they were in the safe room. And they went to try and figure out, was it shrapnel? Was it, why? And I said, it's like, so you go, if that's not safe, but that's one that happened out of the endless amount of Israelis who have been inside the safe room or downstairs in the bunker or wherever their safe place is. It's mainly to be against the shrapnel, against the shockwave. The direct hit of a missile on a building will, depending on the payload, that was a good one. Depending on the payload will destroy the room it goes into. But when I say destroy, it's like it won't necessarily make everything come down, but it depends. Now we get to Iran and Hezbollah. When we talk about the projectiles and what's the difference when it comes to Iran, is that Iran is a standard military industry. That's the first difference. It immediately means, in an odd way, and I know that sounds, is that it's more lethal. They're all lethal, but it's that much more lethal because the type of explosives that you can make in a standard industry, the effectiveness of their lethality is higher. The second thing is that when you're building something inside a standard military industry with advanced machinery, you can put together the warhead together with the body of it, together with the motor of it in a way where it goes to further distance and with a heavier payload. And what was fired into Israel in the last 12 hours, without us knowing the exact different aspects, just knowing from what they have, could be payloads anywhere from 100 kilo to a ton or 2. Those are heavy payloads.
A ton or 2?
Yeah.
For reference, what's something that's like a 2-ton thing when I'm trying to think of?
We very, very, very seldom ever use those kind of weapons. Because we don't use intercontinental ballistic missiles at all. According to the international community, we have them, but I've never heard of us ever having used them. And a ton or 2 is a payload which can destroy essentially a whole neighborhood because of the shockwave and the effect. It would make all of the houses fall down because it makes it essentially do like what you would call a mini. Like an earthquake. And the exact building that it hit would probably make it fall down. And I just thought of something, but it doesn't have to do with that. The impact, when the planes hit the first tower and the second tower on 9/11, we never talk about what that was because it's about the impact, right? But that's just from an impact without explosives. That's just the impact with gas and the impact. Add into it the payload of explosives, and that's why it would be such destruction. And we intercepted them, again, from what we saw over the last 2 days, we intercepted the bulk of them not over the state of Israel. And when you intercept them in the air, the explosion explodes in the air, and what falls down is shrapnel from the missile hitting the rocket, from the interceptor hitting the incoming.
The idea that could even get close and what that would do if it hit one area.
So in that sense, I mean, I'm just looking right now, some of the different warheads that Hezbollah is using against us up north right now, and they've been in the war in that sense, are 100 kilo, 200 kilo, 300 kilo, and they're saying that. Everything that they have is Iranian, and they're very proud that they're doing things that have 500 kilo I'm like, 500 kilo.
500 kilo?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they have some, the heavy duty ones. They like to show them when they're using them.
Oh. So when those things hit, if any of these kind of things was to hit a neighborhood, a street, a building, what does that do to a bomb shelter? What does that do to...
So in an odd way, building may fall down. The bomb shelter, because of the way that it's built, and again, this is the 99% of the time, it's built to withstand the shock waves. In its own way, it's a similar kind of science to building to withstand earthquakes, in an odd way. And it's most definitely scientists that are working and looking at things in a similar way, meaning it knows how to move a bit, because you need to have that elasticity.
Oh man, I'm going to mess it up.
Elasticy? No.
It's close.
Elasticity.
Elasticity, thank you. That's
Okay.
it is elasticity.
Took me a little one there.
No, you're not alone.
Okay. And it will withstand the shrapnel. And the only thing I can say is that if the missile directly hits the wall of it, 99% it'll stop there. I am sure that in 1% it would probably go through, because, the defect here, the defect there, that you can't know in that. But until now, in all of the years that Israel has been attacked by rockets, I know of one person killed in a safe room because he was going in and the door fell on him, meaning the door was not closed the way it was supposed to, and the door itself killed him. And that 4-year-old boy in Sderot who was killed in a safe room, that until now they've never really said what happened there, because they were in the safe room and the door was closed and the window was closed, if that was a defect and if that's something that needs to be fixed. But in general, it gives you safety, protection. And the Israeli Homeland Front, when they were building the safe rooms, it was entirely looking at the threat of projectiles, not airplanes. And that was the development of the idea and design of the safe rooms. And it's such an odd term, because in Hebrew, cheder memugan, safe room, it sounds a little bit more structured than it does in English. Safe room, because you think a safe room here, it's like where you go if a robber comes in or something. Isn't that like the equivalent of the term? And in Israel, it is your concrete bedroom, your heavily concrete extra room in the house. It's always the one that you give the youngest kid in the house because it has the least air, because it always only has one window. And it's a very thick wall, because it's a wall made out of very thick concrete. But hey, kids handle it. And you also let kids sleep there, because then if the alarm goes off, you don't have to get the kids up. That's a real advantage. In the 1990s, when Israel decided that you didn't have to build the bomb shelter anymore because it meant massive construction underground and it was very, very difficult to upkeep, and they said, we'll go into safe rooms, one of the reasons is because they were looking towards an arena where they wouldn't need it. And in its own way, I want to say kudos to the state of Israel that have been, October 7th is such a trauma, but we never canceled safe rooms, meaning we looked at the threat, not at the intention, and we said towards that threat, every single Israeli has to have a safe room in their home. So I'm not against the law here, but I got to tell you that it's an uncomfortable feeling that I don't have one in that sense, because I'm in a house that was built in the in-between times. And nowadays, people look around and see that safe room as something that gives them not just a sense of security, but actual better security. You go inside, that it gives you the protection. And in the arena that we live in, I think that having a sense of security is a really important part of the stamina and resilience of the people in Israel.
You spent a large amount of your life studying this very scenario, this conflict. What are you seeing happening now? Where do you see this going?
Ellie, I have to tell you, okay, it's going to be one of those things, okay, because what I've been mulling over in the last 6 months, and it's not an easy place to be in on where this scenario goes to, is terrorism meets far right, far left anti-Semitism. That's where I see this going to. I think we're already there, and we're still looking at it through old glasses, and we need to look at it through a new lens. And it's not a comfortable one, and I'm not saying just in that sense of us, but the terrorism is something that goes from radicalization, that arrives at extremism, that arrives at a justification for the use of violence. And we're already there. And so when I look at the rockets and the projectiles and all of the different capabilities that these terror groups around us have, I say that's one kind of threat. But as I say, the new lens in that sense of new terrorism is going to be a kind of violence which dehumanizes, delegitimizes, as I said, in that extremism, justifies violent actions against Israelis, it already does, and against Jews, and it's a very scary reality. Yeah, it keeps me up at night. I can't say thank you, because I don't see, I'm not yet where I see a place that I understand how we change this trend. Never thought I'd be living in this arena where the anti-Semitism of the 1930s, it's not the anti-Semitism of the 1930s, but it is absolute 100% anti-Semitism. And it's very scary. It's very scary.